I'll start. Thanks everybody for joining us today. So just some introductions. For those who don't know me, I'm Mark Williams, Director of Operations for Refractiv, and today we have Jack Cook with us, who's a Channel Development Manager at Kaseya. And Jack's here to talk to us about security challenges facing you and all SMEs in what we can all agree is a challenging geopolitical environment at the moment. That's going to be quite interesting, and then I'll run you through what we're doing, what Refractiv is doing to help you to stay safe. As I said before, if you've got any questions, please type them into the chat area in the bottom right, and we'll get through as many as we can at the end. We've got about 45 minutes on this, so we should be able to get through a few. So to kick things off, I'll hand over to Jack.
Better unmute myself. Thank you very much, Mark. And good to see so many people jumping on the webinar. And thank you very much for having me. As Mark mentioned, my name is Jack Cook. I'm a Channel Development Manager at Kaseya. Personally, I think I have a pretty cool job. I'm very fortunate in that I get to travel the world and attend cybersecurity events, technology events, sort of all sorts of events in this space. I get to listen to some incredible speakers, deliver some phenomenal information, guys that are far, far, far more intelligent than I am. But the joy of my job is that I get to sort of distill some of that information and then, I guess, bring it to wider audiences. And that's a little bit of what we're doing today. So what we're going to have a little bit of a look at today is, understand a little bit about how sort of technology is changing, advancing, the impact, I guess, that's going to have on us for good and for bad, how sort of some of the bad actors are stepping in to utilize some of that technology, and then I guess some of the stuff that we can start looking to put in place to protect ourselves in that space, particularly around our sort of cloud environments. Okay. If we start off, I think it's very important to acknowledge and recognize that we are living in a pretty golden age of tech. Okay, think about what you use today that you didn't sort of use almost maybe a year ago, 18 months ago. Most people probably didn't even know what sort of generative AI was before ChatGPT popped on the scene about 18 months ago. And now I would imagine that most people on this call, and if not you specifically, the organizations or businesses that you work with have probably used ChatGPT in some way, shape, or form. And we're continuing to see that evolution of AI at a rate of knots. The original ChatGPT, I think, took something like 6 months to up to 100 million users. The new version that they released a couple of weeks ago, I think, hit that mark within about 8 days. Okay, so it shows just how aggressive people are using this at the minute. Got the likes of virtual reality, which, again, not particularly mainstream, but we're seeing it creep in more and more. I actually saw a photo the other day, which I thought was pretty cool. Someone walking down the street wearing the new sort of Apple goggles with the Dyson headphones that also have an air purifying mask on. So this person's face was pretty much covered head to toe in technology. Type of thing you'd sort of expect seeing like a Blade Runner or something like that, not something that you're sort of expecting to see walking down the street in front of you. But this is stuff that's now on our doorstep. And the same with things like quantum computing. For those that don't know what quantum computing is, basically increases what computers can do by a significant factor. Things that used to take us maybe years to think to be possible could potentially now be completed in seconds, not minutes. That's something that's in theory very possible. We just don't have parts of the technology to build it, but we kind of know how that works. And if that starts changing and becoming much more available, then again, how we function, how our businesses run could change rapidly overnight. And whilst all this stuff is very, very good for us and makes our lives a lot easier, we also have to bear in mind that anything that makes our lives easier, there is someone on the flip side of that coin. Unfortunately, a bad actor, some sort of cyber criminal that is looking at that and working out how they can start using that to their advantage. And we've seen technology come an awful long way in the bad actor space. Obviously, this is a screen full of floppy disks. I sincerely hope no one on this call is still using floppy disks, but I did do this presentation at a conference, or a segment of this presentation at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and I had 3 people in the audience put their hand up and say they're still using floppy disks, which was quite concerning to me. But obviously, you should all recognize these as floppy disks. the reason they're on the screen is because the very first recorded ransomware attack was carried out using floppy disks. Okay, and for those that don't know what a ransomware attack is where a bit of malware or a bit of malicious code gets into your system and locks you out and expects you to pay a ransom before it will give you access to your data. Okay, these were handed out at a World Health Organization conference, over 200 floppy disks in 1989. When you put them into your computer, injected a bit of code, after you restarted your workstation 86 times, a lock screen popped up that said you had to send $100 to a PO box in Panama with your details, and then they'd send you a code back via post to unlock your computer. And that was the first recorded ransomware attack. The person who carried it out was a biologist. They were in no way, shape, or form particularly technical. And they actually claimed they were going to give all the money to charity. They were caught because they bought all 200 floppy disks from the same shop. If you're going to carry out a ransomware attack, don't buy all your floppy disks from the same shop. But they claimed they were going to give all the money to charity. It actually turned out that about 2 months prior, they'd been rejected for a job at the World Health Organization. So you can decide whether they were a good Samaritan or someone seeking a bit of revenge. But those are the facts of the first sort of recorded ransomware attack. And we've seen ransomware come an awful long way since then. In 2013, we had the first sort of crypto locker ransomware attack. And this changed the game for ransomware pretty significantly because it allowed people to pay ransomware using cryptocurrency. Okay. Cryptocurrency is obviously a fairly anonymous form of currency used an awful lot online and particularly in the dark web to pay for things. And this made ransomware from sort of being a bit more of a niche attack vector into being a primary attack vector for bad actors and cyber criminals. It really changed how they could go about delivering this, actually turned it into much more of a business moving forward. We then had the WannaCry attack of 2017, being sort of the next major move in ransomware. Most people on this call will probably remember that attack because this is the strain of ransomware that knocked out the NHS for a pretty significant period of time. This ransomware was particularly malicious because it was the first self-spreading ransomware. Before, with the likes of CryptoLocker, someone had to get into the system and deliver the payload itself. Now with WannaCry, we saw ransomware that was able to spread itself across multiple machines by itself. In fact, in the first 24 hours of this going live, it infected over 300,000 machines in 96 different countries. It was massive. What also made this particularly vicious is that there were allegations from the US that this was released by a North Korean hacking collective that was sponsored by the North Korean government to fill holes with a North Korean budget deficit. Within 24 hours, it infected, as I mentioned, 300,000 workstations. And the way they had to get their data back was by emailing to an email address that was sent on this at the time. Within the first 48 hours of this going live, that email address was shut down by the email carrier. So people had no way of getting their data back. This was a horrible ransomware attack that brought huge chunks of the world to its knees in a pretty big way for a pretty extended period of time. Yeah, we recovered from it, we moved on, but ransomware has continued to develop. There are lots of different versions of it out there. And one of the most recent ones that we're seeing is something called Ransom Cloud, which is now ransomware, which is gaining access to your emails and encrypting all your emails, locking you out of your emails and asking you to pay a ransom via your email. Okay, this stuff is becoming more and more malicious. It's tracking in very, very different ways. And this is most primarily getting access via phishing email, which people will be clicking, unwillingly giving a bad actor access to their emails, and then they're getting in and locking you out and extorting you for your data. And this is happening in cloud environments today. Not just your on-premise servers, not just your laptops, but also your data that you store in the cloud. Whether that be your cloud email, cloud servers, etc. And what's particularly malicious about the newer forms of ransomware is what they call double extortion. So double extortion is where the ransomware don't only hold your data, but they tell you, look, unless you pay your ransom by X date, we're actually going to release all your data online. Okay, and there are websites out there in which you can track where these double extortion attacks are happening and what countries are happening in, how recent they've been, what sort of strains of ransomware are leading the charge, Right, there's a string called Lockbit, which is very much the primary one. Okay, but you're seeing this happen on a massive scale. This double extortion is really the next big threat in this space, causing businesses an awful lot of damage, because not only are you locked out of your businesses for potentially days at a time if you don't have the right sort of solution in place, but you're then being extorted that, like, this data could be released to your competitors or anyone else on the internet who wants to get access to it. And as I mentioned, Lockbit is a pretty malicious actor in this space. Something really interesting with Lockbit is actually they had a double extortion site that was taken down by a multinational police effort on February 22nd of this year. Very highly celebrated, showed the great action for the police force. That website was back up again on February 26th. 4 days later, their double extortion website was back online. It's very, very hard to police this stuff. And not only are these bad actors using double extortion, but they're also starting to use AI to start working on this stuff. Particularly, as I mentioned, with sort of the phishing emails being launched through this, they're getting more and more creative with how they use AI to launch attacks. So, two forms of AI cyber attacks. We would primarily talk about AI-enabled cyber attacks at the minute, because that's all we're really seeing. An AI-enabled cyber attack is where AI supports an aspect of that attack. As we talked about with likes of phishing emails, we're also seeing it in business email compromise. Again, that can be quite related to the sort of the ransom cloud, where someone can get into your email, it's not secured properly, maybe via phishing email or via some other form of exploit. Get in, and then they will watch for trends. They will watch for you sending a specific email at a specific time of a month, maybe to your accounts department or a client asking for a payment. I was actually speaking with a large accountancy firm several months ago. They had a business email compromise. Didn't realize it at the time, and one of their clients that would usually ask for this company to transfer large sums of money towards the end of the month did exactly that. They asked for a large transfer of about £250,000 with a couple of days left in the month. Pretty standard for this client. Person stopped and decided not to transfer that money for the client, because at the bottom of the email, that client had said please and thank you. In 2.5 years of dealing with that client had never once said please or thank you for transferring the money. All right. The bad actor got in, they tried to generate the email themselves and sent it out. Had they used AI and ran previous emails through an AI generator, probably would have generated a much more accurate email that wouldn't have used please or thank you, and we probably would have seen that money get transferred. It's really scary that this stuff is out there and possible. What we're also seeing, or what is being predicted on the other side, is AI-powered cyber attacks, which is where an AI is able to run a cyber attack from start to finish. That was actually predicted for Q4 last year. We still haven't seen this happen yet, which is a very, very good thing. But again, could be a bit of a game changer if we start to see an AI able to run a cyber attack from start to finish. It'd be pretty concerning. But I guess the next question to that is, who are the bad actors that sit behind these ransomware attacks? Who's actually launching these attacks or these cyber attacks on your business? And historically, we would have what you would call a paradigm offender in our minds. When you sort of think of a cyber criminal, whether it be through movies or online, you've probably been conditioned to think of this person that sat with their hood up in their mum or dad's basement, surrounded by energy drinks and packets of crisps, and maybe there's a mouse or a rat rattling about in the corner of the crisps. That's what with the image we sort of had generated in our mind over a period of time. But in reality, bad actors look very, very different to that. Okay, they work in a very, very different way, and there's a very wide range of what those bad actors look like. And here's just a snippet of sort of 10 different examples of what we see as some bad actors that exist out there today. We've got hacking collectives, and so these can be good or bad, but the likes of Anonymous, you've probably heard of before, and that overlaps a little bit with what you see as hacktivists at the bottom line. IoT hackers, which is something I'll come to in a little bit farther on. Like ransomware developers, who just sort of spoke about a couple of different strains of ransomware that we're seeing out there, but you're also seeing things called ransomware as a service, where you can go onto areas of the dark web, buy a ransomware payload, along with a list of contacts that you can send it to, and a crypto wallet to receive the ransomed into, for as little as 35 points. It's really simple to start getting into this game, and this stuff is being developed at a rate of knots. You've got nation state bad actors We talked about that Korean group that was backed by the North Korean government, but we're also seeing large-scale attacks from nations themselves. The likes of Russia launched a large-scale cyber attack before it invaded Ukraine, trying to knock out its energy infrastructure, and actually had a successful cyber attack trying to knock out Ukraine's energy infrastructure back in 2015. Organized crime is, again, a bit of overlap here, where you're seeing large-scale criminal organizations, cyber criminal organizations, start to develop in this space, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. Insider threats being a really, really relevant one, particularly when we're talking about cloud environments, is we're seeing more and more individuals within organizations being approached by bad actors to either delete data or potentially loan out their credentials for a short period of time so a bad actor can gain access to the network. It can even be significantly more literal than that, and you can see people within your workspace causing this issue. An example that we see quite regularly as well, unfortunately, is likes of you guys are probably the people in your businesses that are in working early or working late, and how often when you're working, do the cleaners maybe start to come into the building? Do you think, oh look, I'll just let you clean around my desk, I'll get up, I'll go make myself a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and get out of your way? Would you know if that person swapped out a wire in the back of your computer, or downloaded some data, or if you left your computer on if they accessed your emails? There's so many different threats that can be caused in this way that we're just a little bit naive to at times, that we have to be aware of. Script kiddies this is just becoming accessed by younger and younger age groups. The youngest person to be prosecuted globally is still about 12 years old. For cybercrime, the youngest person to actually be credited as a white hat hacker, so someone who is hacking on the good side of the law, is a 5-year-old who wanted to play Grand Theft Auto on his dad's Xbox that had a parental lock on it, so he couldn't gain access to it. He realized that actually if he hit a certain number of buttons and movements in a consistent mannerism, it broke the parental lock on Xbox. His parents reported this to Microsoft, and they credited him as a software developer on their website. He's still credited on their website, and he received a bunch of vouchers for his hard work. Hacktivists obviously overlap, as I mentioned, with the likes of Anonymous and hacking collectives, malware developers, and mobile malware. This is becoming sort of so easy to do. You can do it on the move. But these are sort of some different examples. But as I mentioned, there's also sort of large-scale criminal organizations that we're seeing move into the space. And here we actually have 3 large-scale criminal organizations: Conti, Ryuk, and TrickBot, that are all 3 separate criminal organizations that operate in this space. We know an awful lot about Conti because Conti came out in quite vocal support as an organization of Russia when Russia invaded Ukraine. Conti is a multinational cyber criminal organization, so understandably its Ukrainian members weren't thrilled when they came out in support of Russia and decided to leak a large number of documents online about the running of this cyber criminal organization. This organization was spending $20 million a year on salary for its employees. That is not a small organization. They had an HR department. They had teams that were so heavily siloed they didn't realize they were working for a cyber criminal organization. They had rewards trips. Their best performers were being sent to the Bahamas. They were actually negatively impacting their worst performers and docking their pay. And they had their attack team split out into the top 20%, targeting enterprises, so large-scale organizations, and the vast majority, 80% of their workforce, targeting SMEs and SMBs. Okay, this was an intelligent organization. What was really interesting as well is these organizations want to be known as the good bad guys. Okay, with a ransomware attack, the attack only works if you think you're going to get your data back. It's the only way these businesses continue to operate and make money. You have to be able to have a recourse to get your data back. And so they have helplines. They are incredibly helpful if you call them up. They will walk you through setting up a crypto wallet. They will give you the best exchange rate that you can find online, and then let you know how you can pay them and get your data back promptly. They are super, super helpful if you call them, and it is scary because that's what they want you to do. They want you to pay the ransom. Obviously, that's not anything we ever encourage. And Mark's going to talk a little bit about ways in which you can make that not be the case. But this is how these organizations run. And then what's super interesting is actually, it was back end of 2022, Conti, Ryuk, and Trickbot, which are 3 separate cybercriminal organizations. You may have heard of them because they all have strains of ransomware named after themselves, merged and formed one cybercriminal organization called Wizard Spider, and that is their logo in the middle. And you've heard all about all these sort of various bad actors, and you're probably thinking, well, look, that's grand. This is all really nice information to have, but ultimately, I'm probably not the target these guys are after. And like, ultimately, you might be right. You may not be the target these guys are after. But that's because these guys aren't after anyone in particular. They're after everyone. They're targeting every single sort of organization out there. And actually, you can see here with these statistics, the top sort of left-hand corner there, SMBs and enterprise make up, over a third of their targets, third of their potential victims. On that sort of double extortion website that I showed earlier, you can jump on there and you can see that the vast majority of businesses on there are SMEs. It's the run rate for them. It's what keeps their businesses going. What makes their life easy. They are targeting those smaller businesses because the smaller businesses ultimately, unfortunately, are the guys that sometimes don't take this stuff as seriously. And they will make a quick buck from you, give you your data back, and move on. And unfortunately, in doing so, if you do pay the ransom, you put a bit of a target on your back. That you say, hey, look, I'm the guy that pays the ransom. Someone else wants to target me, I'm probably going to pay that ransom as well. It's a dangerous cycle to get involved in. But we also have to bear in mind that it's not just the bad actors that we have to be concerned about in this space. Sometimes it's our own employees. And we have this gentleman here that works for the Hawaii Space Agency. You might remember in 2018 that a missile threat was sent out to the whole of Hawaii, suggesting that an inbound missile attack was coming and that everyone should take cover. This gentleman worked for the space agency. This article went out about 2 months before, in a newspaper, went out about 2 months before that alert went out. His organization did have the ability to send that alert. They said it was someone with fat fingers, like myself, who accidentally hit a button they shouldn't have hit. But can anyone spot the issue in this photo? I'll give you a second where I'm not presenting to a live crowd, so it's kind of hard to ask you guys to point it out. But if anyone spotted it, there's a little post-it note under the screen on the left there that if we zoom in on it, has the password to the system. As I said, they heavily deny it this had anything to do with it. But I mean, that's a bit of a coincidence to me. This went out 2 months before that missile went out. But it's not just relaxed Hawaiians that sometimes make mistakes by leaving their password lying about in newspaper articles. Here we also have a member of the royal family on a military base. And again, this was a photo that went out in a newspaper article. And I'll give you a second to sort of scar the picture scape there and see if you can spot where the issue lies. And for those eagle-eyed members of the audience, you might have spotted in the top left-hand corner there beside the door, what looks from a distance to be Wi-Fi login details are actually not just the password, but the username to a military device. This again went out in a newspaper article. People make mistakes. It happens. And once this data gets out there, it maybe gets stored in the dark web, and it's sold to the highest bidder that wants to gain access to your network, gain access to your cloud environment, lock you out of your emails, and lock you out of anything that they want to. And you may recognize this as the cast of Ocean's 11. Don't know how many Ocean's movies there's been now. I feel like there's been an awful lot since the original movie. I don't know if we're on Ocean's 20 yet, but I feel like there's been an awful lot. They robbed a casino in the first Ocean's movie. They used a massive underground drill. They used quite a large crew. They used an EMP. They used an acrobat. They used camera trickery. They used lasers. They used all sorts of stuff to rob a casino. In real life, a casino was robbed in Vegas, and all it took is what you can see in this photo here. No, it's not the computer. It's not the Nintendo Switch. It's not the phone. It also wasn't the bottle of gin, which I've had someone shout out before and say, did someone get pissed in the bottle of gin and them into the vault? Not quite the answer. It is that big glaring light in the background is fish tank. Okay, in 2018, there was a casino that had a wireless thermometer in its fish tank that someone in the lobby spotted, was able to connect to, move laterally across their network, and steal over $10 million of high roller data. These threats are right there. Once someone gets into the network and they can start stealing credentials and they can start locking you out of your network, it really puts you in a very, very tricky spot. Okay, and as we saw with these sort of passwords, once those passwords end up online, there's no telling where they're going to end up. So we need to start looking at a better line of defense. And that's where likes of cloud backups become so important. And it's really important to understand why cloud backup is important, because to start with, we probably have to understand a little bit more about what the cloud is. And I don't want to insult anyone's intelligence on this call. I'm sure you all are well aware of what the cloud is, but it's just worth recapping that people sometimes think that a cloud environment just means it's infallible, right? It's not. All it means is that bit of hardware that was once running in your office has now been taken over by the likes of Google, Microsoft, Oracle, whatever. There's plenty of cloud providers out there, but that they are now responsible for that hardware rather than yourself. That hardware still exists. You just connect to it in a different way. Actually, there was a survey done in the US a little while ago, where 51% of the 5,000 people interviewed thought that bad weather could affect cloud computing. All right, it's not the case. You mentioned cloud just means that bit of hardware that did exist in your office now exists somewhere else, and it still needs to be protected, because we've started leveraging cloud so much more heavily than we ever used to in the past. Likes of COVID pushing us much more to a remote and hybrid work environment has meant that things like Google Workspace and Microsoft Teams have become much more prevalent. These are some statistics you can see here on Microsoft Teams and how it had a 44 million daily active users and massive bump during COVID. And you might say it because Microsoft Teams is the one that probably gets the most press in the news, just Microsoft being the organization it is. Google has a larger market share. Google has about 55% in that sort of cloud environment of Teams, email, etc., versus Microsoft. Microsoft actually only run about 40% of the market, and there's about 5% that there are other companies that exist. Okay, so 55% of the market is running Google Workspace at the minute, and it's just as important that you protect that stuff, because as I mentioned, it's a cloud environment. It still exists, just somewhere else. And just because they have a retention policy, which most of them have, it's about 45 days, that is not a backup. That just means that they have a copy of your data for 45 days, right? But it's not a fully constituted backup. They're not keeping it for a year. They're not keeping it in, for 6-7 years, as some compliance companies might need you to do. What we're seeing is that at least 1 in 3 companies using these cloud environments are now consistently starting to lose data. There's a couple of different ways in which they're losing data, and actually those sort of bad actors in cloud environments make up a relatively small proportion. All right, it's about 13-15%. We've seen this increase recently. It's a slightly outdated stuff. It's closer to about 20-25% now, but it's still a relatively small proportion of that total data loss being caused by those bad actors. You've got 7% is being caused by malicious deletions, and this is where someone within your organization might want to delete something as you've annoyed them, or they've annoyed you, or maybe you're asking them to quit the organization or something like that, and they have to, as a result, as a retaliation, they decide they're going to delete data from your system. And that, unfortunately, is something that we are seeing all too regularly. And then finally, the most common cause of data deletion is, of course, just accidental end user deletion. People doing that by accident, not intentionally meaning to be malicious. They just delete a file without knowing where it's going or what they've done to it. Maybe click the delete button by accident, not even realized. If they don't realize within that 45-day window, then you're out of luck. That data is gone. You can't get it back unless you have a proper backup in place that is protecting you from those bad actors and protecting you from those accidental deletions. And it's so important because, as I mentioned, like that hardware still exists. It exists somewhere else. There's what we call a shared responsibility model in place with cloud data. And Google will still be responsible for that hardware, whether it be a hardware failure, software failure, natural disaster outage. It's their job to make sure that hardware is running as close to 24/7, 365 as possible for you. As the customer, it's your responsibility to cover everything else, whether that be human error, programming errors, not setting it up correctly, a malicious insider, hackers, malware, viruses, ransomware. You name it, that all falls on you. That is not Google's responsibility. They are there to make sure the hardware is up and running. You are there for everything else. And that's where organizations, like Refractiv and Mark come into play, is that they can help you take a bit of that responsibility and take that weight off your shoulder. And as I mentioned, these backups or retention policies that Google have in place, they're not backups. They will hold your data for 45, in some cases 60 days. After that, that data is gone. Unless you have a proper retention policy in place with a backup provider, then the potential of losing that data is astronomical. And it's not just that, it's getting hold of that data again. Because ultimately you've got three choices, or three choices at the end of this. You can do nothing, and unfortunately, nearly 40% of the people on this call will probably do nothing. Okay, you'll go away and you think, yeah, Jack and Mark made some really good points, but like I'll get to it when I get to it. And the issue we see with this is it is the home insurance policy everyone wants after the house is burnt down. If you get locked out of your business, if you get hit with a ransomware attack, unfortunately, it's probably too late at that stage. It can take days, weeks, months sometimes to get back into your systems, get access to your data if you don't have the proper solutions in place. By that time, it's irreparable damage that's been done to your business. You can continue to work with Google as is, and it's still a great company, but this is just not one of their strong points. And ultimately, unfortunately, Google being the size of company they are, you are a very, very small fish in Google's incredibly large and vast ocean. And if you call them up because you've lost a single file that is very important to you, it is very, very difficult to track that down through Google's system to get that file back, even if you're within your 45-day retention period. It's just not how they're built. They're not designed to deal with the volume of organizations that use this. Okay. Or option number 3 is that you can regain control. Okay, start using a solution that is designed specifically to do this, that gives you access to your data as and when you want it, however you want it, be it in file volume format, and make sure that it gets it's back to you within minutes, if not seconds, rather than the potential hours that you're gonna have to spend on the phone with Google, or just being completely out of luck if it's a malware or ransomware attack where actually you just don't have access to your data, full stop. All right. There's really unfortunate situations out there that exist because people just won't take action. But that is very much what we're here today to do. Okay, you guys have taken time out of your business to sit down and understand more about this, and that is a massive step in the right direction, because it's an asymmetrical battlefield out there, unfortunately. You guys running your businesses and organizations have to protect a million different ways in, a million different routes in. The bad actor only has to find that one mistake, whether that's a patch you haven't updated, whether that's a phishing email that someone clicks on, whether that's just an individual that's left a password lying about. So many different ways they can get in, and they get in that one negative way, and all of a sudden you're in trouble. But the key thing to remember is that there are organizations out there like Mark and Refractiv that can help you out, and there are solutions out there. Okay, you're not in this on your own. I travel the world trying to understand this stuff. It's my full-time job, and I struggle to stay on top of it. That's why organizations like Refractiv exist, because it's too much for any one person or one organization to take on themselves. But that is all from me, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed that session. You found some really useful information in there. If you do want to connect with me, you can do that. That is not a malicious QR code, I promise you. Not a scary QR code. You can click it. It should just take you to my LinkedIn page, and you can connect with me if you'd like. And if anyone has any questions, always feel free to reach out. But thank you very much for your time today, guys. I really appreciated being here. And as I said, hopefully you've all learned something of value and of interest. I'll hand back over to you, Mark.
Thanks for that, Jack. It's fascinating stuff. Yeah. So, what can Refractiv do to help you? Just run through a few things. And with these threats to your business, and we're getting more and more of these questions from clients as well. We feel the sensible approach is to recommend that you do implement a cloud backup solution, and the solution that we're recommending is the one we've used since 2010 actually, which is SaaS protection. And there's 4 main reasons that we continue to use it, continue to recommend it to clients. You have automated continuous backups. It's easy to onboard. You can have access, or we can have access. It's really friendly system to use, and the restore when it's required is fast, and very straightforward to understand as well. You're not alone though. If you're convinced that you need this, and I hope you are, then we offer 2 solutions. There's a solution where we just provide the licenses for you, or there's a solution where we manage it for you. So as part of our evolved managed service offerings across all the products that we sell, we can manage the backup. We can monitor it weekly for you. We can provide you with reports, and we can also do the restore if required as well. What we're doing from July is we're requiring customers to either sign up for SaaS protection, or drop us a line in writing to let us know that you don't require a backup. This is something that Google are encouraging, as Jack mentioned, there's a shared responsibility model, and they've written it into their terms as well, that they're not responsible for a customer's data. So we feel that they're giving you this opt-out option, so that we know that you understand the risks, is the right approach to take. I think if we'll be in touch, but if you want to get ahead of the curve with our customers and you want to implement backup, then just drop us a line and we can talk you through it. Okay. Another tool that I wanted to talk to you about in this ongoing cybersecurity battle is email security, and DMARC is a new email authentication method, and it kind of allows you to understand your email, what's being sent out from your domain, and most of you will already have the authentication methods that are slightly older, SPF and DKIM, and those 2 together are like a certificate of legitimacy, so you can display that to recipient servers and say, let me in, look, I've got SPF and DKIM, these are legitimate emails. DMARC kind of completes that circle. It's an instruction to the recipient servers to reject anything that doesn't have that certificate of legitimacy. And just going back to SPF and DKIM, by the way, you should check that you've definitely got those in place. You should go into your DNS and just make sure that those records are in place. If you're in any doubt, then do let us know, and we can help you check, and we can also help with the setup of both of them if they're not in place already. But DMARC, we're now recommending that you put this in place. Again, it's another managed service that we can offer. So we've partnered with a company called Demarcian, and over a period of 12 months, we can implement this and monitor it for you. So the benefits of DMARC, it's secure email, so it stops bad actors, as Jack has mentioned, as described, from being able to use your domain to send emails pretending to be you, and those emails could go to your customers, your clients, or they could go to your internal staff as well. A lot of phishing emails do pretend to be a senior member of the team asking for payment to a junior member of the team, that sort of thing. So DMARC with DMARC in place, that would stop that from happening. With Demacian, we have a dashboard that will show us exactly what is happening, what your email sources are. It will show the threats coming in as well. You'll be able to see who is sending email using your domain, and we kind of lock that down over a period of months until we feel confident that we're by telling recipient servers to reject your email, that we're not blocking any legitimate email, because you don't want email to not reach your clients, important email to not reach your clients. And then once you've got a DMARC policy in place that is reject, then that improves your deliverability. So your emails are less likely to go to a recipient spam inbox, and less likely to be rejected as well. The two things here, the policies that Google and Yahoo are putting in place, and Microsoft as well, since February 2024, bulk senders, if you send a lot of email a day using email blasters, that sort of thing, you do have to have DMARC in place for Google and Yahoo to not instantly reject those emails. And there's also by March 2025, if you have a PCI assessment, then you'll require DMARC for that. And we're also seeing cyber essentials and cyber insurance requiring DMARC as well. So I feel fairly confident in the next few years DMARC is going to be a required email authentication method. So get ahead of the curve, get in touch with me, and we can set DMARC up for you and monitor it for you for a fairly small monthly fee. And finally, we offer more than just licenses. We're experts on Google Workspace, and we've been using it ourselves since 2010. We have experts on the team who know the Google admin panel inside and out, and we offer a security audit. So it's almost like an MOT check for your domain. And we have a list from Google of recommended settings, and we compare those settings against what your current settings are. And just doing that can help increase and improve your security and keep these people out of your domain as well. We also offer annual help desk, ranges from standard support, which is reactive, there when you need us, to a managed support. So if you don't have an IT team and you want us to work with you on a monthly basis, making sure your domain is secure, fixing anything that you need fixing, adding users, that sort of thing, then we can help with that. And finally, we offer training courses on all the products, but also admin panel training as well. So if you're interested in any of our additional services, they're all detailed on our website. Then get in touch and let us know. Okay, that's it. Do we have any questions, Eugene?
We have a few questions, so I'm going to read them. I think the first one is for Jack. If I'm already paying for cyber insurance, is it necessary to pay for backup as well?
Yeah. Well, long and short answer is yes. The cyber insurance is great, and I know I used the example of that sort of the home insurance policy. Everyone wants after the house burns down, and cyber insurance is very much something you want in place. The thing you'll notice with cyber insurance, though, is read your policy very closely. Cyber insurance and cyber criminal insurance may be two very different things depending on your insurance provider. They may protect you against maybe accidental cyber issues, but not maliciously targeted attacks. So you might want to just read into your insurance documentation and make sure that's the case. Also, it's worth recognizing that as with anything, putting certain steps in place will lower your premium for your insurance. And it's also really important to recognize like cyber insurance is exactly the same as home insurance, in the sense that if you've ticked the box to say you've got certain things in place, whether that be MFA or you've got a backup because you think Google's retention qualifies as a backup, it doesn't. And then you have a cyber issue and you need to use your cyber insurance, and they check and you haven't got all that stuff in place, they're going to find a reason not to pay you out. It's the same with your home insurance, where if you tick the box to say you've got locks in your windows, that's grand. But if you go away on holiday and you don't actually, go get the physical key and lock your windows shut, then unfortunately your insurance provider doesn't care. They see that as a loophole not to pay you. So long and short answer is yes, you should still be investing in something like this, even if you're using cyber insurance. And I do strongly recommend having cyber insurance as well as having a backup for this.
Thank you, Jack. The next question is about Google Vault. Is Google Vault enough for backup, or do we need to do something externally?
Yeah, I can answer that. Google Vault is not a backup. Google Vault is a e-discovery and retention tool. So yes, it takes a copy of your data across Google Workspace, but you can't restore it. So it's there, and you can use it to rapidly search across your data, and you can view that data, but you can never restore it back to Google Workspace. So you would definitely still need a cloud backup.
And the final question, do I need to back up all my users on SaaS protection?
No, you don't. You can back up key users if you wanted to. Any user that you add their data that they own, so email, calendar, contacts, drive documents and files that they own, would be backed up. If you have shared drives, then you need to make sure that you're backing up I think it's 70% of users, so you need that coverage to then back up the content of the shared drives. But we can talk to each individual about that.
I would just maybe extend on that, Mark, and say like it's not a particularly expensive or costly solution to put in place, and for the sake of leaving out some users, it's sod's law. It really is. There's users that you leave out are going to be the guys that delete something, or the guys that have something that goes wrong. Yes, like they might not be the business owners or execs where it's super critical, but just because it's not sort of exec level critical doesn't mean that it might not be super critical to one of your clients, or a bit of information that's super critical just to the running of the business, or making sure that you don't ruin some sort of relationship or deal you have on the tracks. So whilst it is very much possible to split out users, I would strongly recommend just considering whether or not that the ways justifies the means in that case.
Yeah, good point, Jack. Thanks for that. Do we have any more questions?
We don't have any other questions.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Hopefully you found that as interesting as I did. Jack, thank you very much for joining us. It's appreciated. No
problems, Luke. Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure to be here. And yeah, I hope everyone's found some useful information out of my session. At least I know I got some very useful information on yours. Thank you. Okay, thanks everybody. Cheers, guys.